Good morning. We are on the Gemara, Kaf Gimel Amud Aleph 103a. So the Gemara discussed in the last section we learned about Yak Nahaz, this process of making Kiddush and Havdala together when Yom Tif is Saturday night, in which case one is required to make Havdala closing out Shabbos and Kiddush to open up the Yom Tif. And one does so in one ceremony holding one cup of wine. And therefore, there's a whole question as to the order of which of the various brachas should be made first. And the conclusion is Yak Nahaz, as we discussed at great length. The Gemara now makes another number of comments now, or anecdotes, regarding the order of blessings specifically related to Havdala. And more specifically, the two blessings that aren't even Havdala at all, namely the BESAMIM and the candle. So this is not the discussion here, but just briefly what we're doing with the BESAMIM and the candle is as follows, right? So we have Havdala. Havdala is, as we'll learn soon, where we get the idea of Havdala from. That's going to become, we'll discuss that more in detail later in the Gemara here in relation to Kiddush. But essentially, they're both the same idea, Havdala and Kiddush, in that they declare and sanctify the day that we are going into, or the day we're leaving, as unique and separate from the rest of the days of the week. That's the essential blessing. So as Shabbos or Yom Tov closes, we thank Hashem for separating between Shabbos and week. That's what Havdala means, separation. Okay. As with all blessings, or many such ceremonies, blessings, we have a cup of wine. So they have a second bracha, Hagafen on the wine. So you have two brachas, one on the Havdala, one on the wine. The order between those two, whether wine is first or Havdala is first, similar to whether Kiddush should become first or wine should become first. We already know that we do Kiddush first. We'll discuss that later, the discussion BeSamim and BESAMIM. But there are two other blessings we add to our Havdala service. We add a bracha over fire, and a bracha over BESAMIM. The reason for these two brachas are, it's been 24 hours we're not allowed to light a candle because it's Shabbos. And now that we have enjoyment from candle, we make a bracha when Shabbos is over. That's the basic reason. It's kind of similar to how we thank Hashem for everything we enjoy in life. We wake up in the morning, we thank Hashem for having shoes, for having a hat, for having a belt, for walking on dry land, and so on and so forth. So we say thank Hashem for light as well. In addition, if my memory serves me correctly, fire was created Motzei Shabbos. Okay, so that's the fire. The bracha of BESAMIM is because we experience on Shabbos what's called an neshama yeseda, an additional neshama, an additional spiritual sensitivity, if you want to use modern language. And when Shabbos is over, the neshama is a little let down. So BESAMIM is a kind of restoration to that neshama, give it a little pep.
Oh, it's funny. They say BESAMIM is also very good for, God forbid, someone who passed, like the Ilul Neshama. They say BESAMIM, a blessing, is very good.
Yeah, so so there's a revival element to it. There's also, at I think the Spartan also do it at Bris. At a Bris, they'll have BESAMIM by a Bris.
Sublime nature.
Yeah, it's a more spiritual. The sense is, right? The intake is not so what's the word? Corporeal, like food, or even like sound, and even sight, for that matter. Yeah, it's the most sublime of them all. Okay, so now the question becomes here that the anecdotes we're going to be reading now are regarding to the order of which one comes first, the BESAMIM or the candle, between those two. Not the wine and the Havdala, we'll get to that later, but specifically between the BESAMIM and the candle. So on Motzei Yom Tif, when we're doing this Yak Nahaz, we're making the bracha on the candle because on Yom Tif you can enjoy a candle, you're allowed to light flame on Yom Tif, but you cannot light on Shabbos. But we don't make the bracha BESAMIM because the neshama is not so let down because it's going from Shabbos into Yom Tif. So BESAMIM is not done then. So he says the Gemara like this. The line begins at the word vehilchasa. Maybe it's a third from the top of the page. There's a little aleph at the beginning of the page. And then the line, the little aleph at the beginning of the line. And then it says vehilchasa karava. And then it says Rav Huna. That's where we are. Middle, third from the top of Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph 103a.
Like 10 lines.
Something like that, yeah. Rav Huna bar Yehuda, Rav Huna, son of Yehuda, Ikla lebei Rava. He went to the home of Rava, I guess, on Saturday night, or maybe he was there for Shabbos. At any rate, it was Matzah Shabbos. Yeah. Where is that Rashbama I was looking at? Yeah. A regular Matzah Shabbos. Not necessarily going into Yom Tov, just a regular Saturday night. Aisul Kamei, they brought before Rava, Ma'ir or Besamim, a flame or torch of sorts, and Besamim as part of his Havdala process. So Bich Rava a Besamim Beresha. Rava first made the blessing over the Besamim. V'hadar Ma'ir, and then on the candle. This is what we do, right? We make a bracha on the wine, then Besamim, then candle, and then Havdala. So that's what Rava did. He made the bracha on Besamim first. So Amar Lei, Rav Huna said to Rava, Vaha, why did you do that? But is it not Bein Beis Shammai, Bein Beis Hillel, whether you follow the view of the house of Shammai or follow the view of the house of Hillel, Ma'ar Beresha, candle should be first, V'hadar Besamim, and then the bracha on the Besamim. So whatever your opinion is regarding which one comes first, Havdala or wine, as per the dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, when it comes to candle and Besamim, it would seem, says Rav Huna, at least from the text that he had, it would seem they both agreed that candle comes first. So why did you make the bracha on Besamim first? Umayi, and what is this text that Rav Huna is referring to when he says, and when he claims that Hillel and Shammai both agree that once you make the bracha on Besamim before, once you make the bracha on candle before Besamim? The Tanan, because you've learned. This is the Mishnaic text that Rav Huna is referring to. Beis Shammai says, the house of Shammai says, Ner u'mazayin Besamim v'Havdala. If someone is eating a meal at the end of Shabbos, and he's coming to make Berachas Hamazon, and as he mentioned before, if the person can't afford it and he only has one cup of wine, he would hold that cup of wine for both his benching, for his Berachas Hamazon, and for his Havdala, combined. If he can afford 2 cups of wine, we learned already he should have 2 cups. But this person doesn't. He only has 1 cup available. So what's the order when you're combining now Berachas Hamazon and Havdala? So it says Beis Shammai, you first make the bracha on the candle. The rationale would be the second Shabbos is over. You can now enjoy a candle. You have to make the bracha as soon as you enjoy it. Bracha right away, as soon as Shabbos is over. Then make Berachat Hamazon, you're finishing your meal. Then make on Besamim, and then Havdala. That would be Beis Shammai's opinion. But Beis Hillel says, Ner, first candle, agreed. The second Shabbos is over, you're enjoying your candle, make the bracha on candle. Then Besamim, right away, give that pep to your neshama, and then mazon, then bench, closing out your meal of Havdala and Havdala. The point here is that whichever combination you're doing, whether you're putting Besamim after Berachas Hamazon or putting Besamim before Berachas Hamazon, everybody agrees that Ner is at the beginning, candles at the beginning, and Havdala is at the end. Which means no matter where you put Besamim and Berachas Hamazon in the middle, Besamim comes after candle. Whereas you, Rava, you made the bracha on candle before, made the bracha on Besamim before candle. So Ani Rava Basarei, Rava responded to Rav Huna, V'Amar, and he said as follows: Zu, that text you just quoted, is Divrei Rabbi Meir. This is the way Rabbi Meir related the dispute between the houses of Shammai and Hillel. Aval, but Rabbi Huda relates this same dispute in a different way. Rabbi Huda relates as follows. Quote from Rabbi Huda: Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are not arguing al hamazon with regard to Berachat Hamazon. Shu b'tchila, that's first. Val Havdala, and Havdala is last. She b'sefer is at the end. So what's the dispute between Shammai and Hillel? Al hamor val Besamim, on candle and Besamim spices. Beis Shammai says moir v'achkach Besamim, candle and then spice. Beis Hillel says Besamim, spice, v'achkach moir, and then candle. So, in other words, Meir's version is that they both agreed candle beginning, Havdala end, and the question was which one's first in the middle, Besamim or Havdala. Rabbi Huda says no. They actually all agree that first comes Berachat Hamazon, then Havdala, and the question is candle and Besamim, which one's in the middle. So there's two variations to the dispute. We have to remember that we read this all in one page, but this is really spanning centuries. The houses of Shammai and Hillel are established sometime in the middle of the Second Temple period. Yeah, in the middle of the Second Temple period. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir exist or live at the destruction of the post-destruction of the Second Temple. And Rava and Rav Huna live in Babylonia a couple centuries later. So this is like, I don't know, 7-8 centuries of conversation and of text passed down from one to the other. And somewhere in this time, so let's say between the houses of Hillel and Shammai established in the middle of the Second Temple, till Rabbi Meir and Yehuda discussing post the destruction, they had two different variations to the same text coming to you. And that same difference in text between Yehuda and Meir was passed down to Rava and to Rav Huna.
It's crazy though, that like how can you be discussing the order between what comes first, the candle or the BESAMIM, for hundreds of years? It's a conversation.
It's a good question. Yeah. So you have
how
to,
important,
you have to think about it like the same way you would have like there's still like an ongoing discussion, if you will, let's just say,
Sure, yeah.
between like this Sfarim also do Hoidu and then Baruch Hashamar, right?
Hoidu and then what, sorry?
Baruch Hashamar in the morning for Shacharit.
Oh, I can't tell you.
Baruch Hashamar first. The Chabad does Hoidu first and then Baruch Hashamar, but the Ashkenazim do Baruch Hashamar and then Hoidu. So there's an ongoing discussion until today. So it's a similar kind of thing. After they do Hoidu first. The Sfarim do Hoidu first. Yes, it's correct. That's right. So that's like an ongoing discussion. The same way back then they were arguing. There was a discussion, as it were. Some people did BESAMIM first in their house, and some people did
no, I'm just saying
Amara first in their house. Like today, some people do Hoidu first and the Baruch Hashamar first.
Talking about it, and it's something as little as like you think which one you're doing first between the candle and the smell. It just shows how important
that's right.
it is.
Right. Every detail is
like, oh yeah, I lit it.
Everything's exact. Everything's gonna be precise. That's right. So therefore, Rava responds to Rav Huna and says, this text that you're quoting, that tells us that Shammai and Hillel agree that candle comes first, is Rabbi Meir's version of that conversation. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda tells us, no, that Shammai and Hillel actually agree that benching would come first and Havdala last, if you're going to combine the two. And their dispute is precisely about this question, which one comes first, candle or BESAMIM? And Beis Hillel is of the view, BESAMIM comes first in Rabbi Yehuda's reading of that dispute. Again, putting it in the timeline there. And then Rava concludes and says, Rabbi Yochanan said, no, the community practiced like Hillel as Rabbi Yehuda says it. So let's understand this so we can understand what's going on here in terms of like in terms of understanding how this works. So right, we're marking the beginning of the destruction of the Second Temple. So this is like a demarcation point in history, right? Pre to post destruction. A lot of upheaval, a lot of change. You have to have people who remember, who know. Even more importantly, in terms of halacha, is not in terms of the development of halacha, is not just the switch from pre to post temple destruction, but actually from Israel to Babylonia. When you have mass migration and you have a new community opening in a new place, it's oftentimes hard to transplant the customs from the old place. You have it here in Montreal. You'll often hear, especially amongst the Sephardic Rabbanim, you'll hear in Morocco, this is how we used to do it. Mm-hmm. Right? Because in the last, let's say, 40 years, there's been mass migration of Moroccan Jews to, say, France and Israel and Montreal. So there's like this ongoing discussion to try to accurately transplant the customs that existed there to here. Ashkenazim, we did it already 60 years ago after the war. But that was a similar kind of thing after the war. But I remember my shtetl, this is how we used to do it. Lubavitch went through a similar thing. The Rebbe actually spent a lot of time collecting from elder Hasidim what were the customs in the Chabad cities back in Russia to codify the official code. We were talking about this the other day, to like put together and codify the official Chabad custom. Because as you go from one place to the next, you have to like to transplant it. You lose it. You have to investigate who remembers what they did do, what they didn't do, all these various different details. So in terms of this era, the Mishnah and the Gemara demarcate these two geographies. The Mishnah is written in the Eretz Yisrael just after the destruction of the Second Temple. That's when the Mishnah is written. And then the Gemara's era is written in Babylonia after Jews start to migrate in that direction. Okay? Now Rava and Avhona are maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 generations in, not 5 generations, it couldn't have been that far down, maybe 3, 4 generations into the Gemara's era. So they could be already 60, 70, 80 years after mass migration away from Eretz Yisrael. And they're discussing, should we do BESAMIM first or Havdala first? Well, they're going to try to find fragments of texts that come to them from the old country, from Eretz Yisrael. Right? And they each had different ones. Because in Eretz Yisrael too, there were the change in period, the pre-temple, the post-temple, that calamity that changed things. And that would have also changed the way people receive the tradition. So if you have the houses of Shammai and Hillel that exist before the destruction of the second temple, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir, right after the destruction of the second temple, they're holding 2 different texts. One that has a dispute between Hillel and Shammai, where everyone agrees candles first, and the other having a dispute between Hillel and Shammai exactly about what's first, candle or BESAMIM. Right? And then these 2 texts make it into Babylonia. So which one's the right one? Rabbi Yochanan, who is a generation or 2 or 3 before Avhona and Rava, at least 2, maybe even 3, he is one who actually moved from Eretz Yisrael to Babylonia, a scholar, a leading figure, and part of the transition team between the Mishnaic era in Eretz Yisrael and the Talmudic era in Babylonia. He's like Rabbi Yochanan, I think he even studied directly under Rebbe, who was the compiler of the Mishnah. So he knows how it used to be. So he comes and says, you should know, Nagu Ha'am, the custom of the people was to follow Hillel in the name of the way Rabbi Yehuda had it, to put BESAMIM first. So gives you the historical context as to why Rabbi Yochanan's statement is so valuable.
So this was all written in the Galut?
This is all written in the Galut, yeah. The Gemara is all written in it. That's why it's not in Hebrew, it's in Aramaic. It's like funny Aramaic. It's like Jewified Aramaic.
This is Aramaic?
Mostly, yeah.
Oh,
no, the side is also Aramaic, but yeah. Jews had this ability throughout exile to create their own exilophied language. I don't know if that's the right word. But Jews had this ability to do that. Yiddish, Ladino, and Judeo-Arabic, and going back, yeah, this Judeo-Aramaic.
The text, is it just like the font that's different, or
it's a different font?
Like a different language.
It's a different font,
but it's the same
language. It's a different font.
And this is Rashi.
It's all, yeah, that's Rashi.
So if I could read this, I should be able to read this. It's just
perhaps, yeah, it's different font. It's often called Rashi script.
Okay.
It's the script that people used to use for like cursive, like handwriting. It's easier to move your pen around in these shapes rather than the block shapes of what we call Aksav Ashuri, which is a classic Hebrew writing. Okay. It's called Rashi script. I'm not sure why. I mean, I assume because when the printers want to put 2 different texts on the same page, they made it offset by different fonts, and this became called the Rashi font. But then I don't know that Rashi actually used this font at all. Maybe did, maybe didn't. I don't know. Okay. A few more lines. And now we wait into, okay, so this, by the way, just to conclude out, we're not looking at the Shulchan Aruch to discuss the order of BESAMIM and candle. It's part of a whole discussion as to what exactly these things are for, which is not really the subject of our discussion here. But I'll just say that the Shulchan Aruch Alter Rebbe writes, this is not his idea, this comes from earlier sources, but he writes that the order of Havdala can be remembered in the word Yibana, which is appropriate for today. We're marking the destruction of the temple, and Yibana means shall be rebuilt. Mehida Yibana HaMikdash. Let the temple be rebuilt soon. Right? This word rebuilt is Yibana. And Yibana has 4 words, 4 letters. Yud, Beis, Nun, Hey. And that's the order. Yayin, BESAMIM, Ner, Havdala. So the Havdala ceremony is Yibana. Simple way to remember the order, and it's related to today's day. You mark the destruction, and we pray for the rebuilding, for the Yibana.
Amen.
Sorry?
Amen.
Yeah. So we'll learn a few more lines, and the Gemara now wades into a different discussion, which we'll get into more detail tomorrow and the coming weeks, and we'll look at some of the Shulchan Aruch on this topic because this is quite involved and quite a bit. And this is the question of how many brachos do you make if you're drinking more than 1 cup of wine? And the Gemara raises this because later in the Gemara, as part of one of its discussions, the Gemara is going to compare it to Yak Nahats. And that's why it comes up now.
Isn't there an idea that we learned this, I think, in Brochos, that wine is treated as a separate meal?
That's correct. So even if you're eating bread, you would still make a gafen.
Right.
If you wash for bread at the beginning of your meal, you wouldn't make a bracha on anything else other than your glass of wine. Yes, that's correct. So it's in that same chapter, Shulchan Aruch, it also borrows from this Gemara too. The chapter Shulchan Aruch discusses that as well. She's very tzaddik. What is it? Very tzaddik vav. No, happy. Okay. So the Gemara is like this. Yaakov bar Abba ikla lebei Rava. Rav Yaakov, son of Abba, went to the home of Rava. Okay. Chazia, Rav Yaakov observed that Rava was a leading scholar. This is the second time already where people are going to his home and observing his practice and commenting, right? We had before Rav Huna is commenting on Rava's practice, and now Rav Yaakov is commenting on Rava's practice, because he was a leading scholar of his day, student of Rav, great venerated scholar of the day. So Rabbi Yaakov is there, and Chazia, and he sees the brich bari priagafen akisa kama. He made hagafen on his first cup of wine, that is to say, at the beginning of the meal. V'hadar brich akisa de brichasa, and then he made a bracha bari priagafen on the cup of wine that he held during their after blessing. In other words, he made a gafen at the beginning of his meal, which is what we do, and then he benched holding a cup of wine. He made the Brochos holding a cup of wine, and at the end of Brochos he made another hagafen. The ishti, and then he drank from that other bottle, which is what we do, by the way, right? We all do that, but again, we do it because of what's written here. So Amar Le, so Rav said to Rava, Lamaloch kulahai, why are you doing all of this? Why are you making all these blessings? Habrich lan mar chada zimna. Master already made a bracha once. Why are you making another bracha? Why am I making another bracha? In other words, Rav Yaakov doesn't see benching as an interruption. You knew before you started benching that you were going to be holding a cup of wine and drinking it after. So why shouldn't the brachas hagafen go continue right after? Especially as you just said, the bracha on wine is independent from the meal, and that even if you're washed and you don't have to make a mezainis, you don't have to make a shakel, you do have to make a bracha by hagafen. So then, if it's like independent from your meal, then your Birkat HaMazon maybe covers your meal. But considering that you knew you were about to drink a cup of wine after, why make another bracha by Piragafen? You already made one on your meal. This is what Rav asks of Rava. So Amar Le Rava responds. This is like this: Kiavina Bei Reish Galusa. When I was at the house of the exilarch, right? The exilarch was like the continuation of Jewish sovereignty in the exile, in a funny kind of way. The Jews maintained, even as they left Eretz Yisrael, certainly in Babylonia, and then even later in Spanish countries, less, they were more integrated into society. But in the Ashkenazi countries, Jews maintained their own individual self-governance with the permission of the local government, and it made it easy for the local government. Instead of the local government dealing with each Jew individually, they dealt with them as a group, which they actually dealt with most people as groups in guilds, right? All the fishermen have to pay X tax, and all the bakers pay X tax, and you guys figure out yourselves how you want to do it. So the Jews were like its own class, and they were treated as such. So they had their own self-governing body, at the head of which was the Reish Galusa, the head of the exilarch, who was both political and Torah together. Although the Torah primarily fell, certainly in later generations, fell on the Goinim, which was like the leader of the academies of Surah and Pogadisa. At any rate, so the Reish Galusa is like basically the center of Jewish life, center of Jewish authority in Babylonia. And it would have been an honor, which the Gemara makes reference to quite a few times, to be invited to the exilarch, to spend Shabbos there, or to whatever it is, to spend Shabbos there. So it says, when I was there, when I was at the exilarch, at the head of the...
Sorry, you have the title Mar.
Mar means master, sir, or master. So sometimes it could be used for anybody.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it can be used for
Rav.
we just use now, yeah. Rav said to Rava, Mar, did you not, sir, did you not, master, did you not make your bracha already? Yeah. I think Nachman served as Reish Galusa, Rav Chizda served as Reish Galusa at one point. Like we know the names of the people who served, from the various different episodes that they're described in the Gemara. Okay, so it says Rava, when I was at the exilarch, this is what they did. They made the bracha during the meal. And when the benching was over, they made the bracha again. So Amar Le. So Rav Yaakov said back to Rava, Tindich Beresh Galuza, leave the head of the exilak out of the equation. You cannot compare the practice there to what we're doing. The Hachi Abid, that's what they did. Why? The Suffolk Maisilon, Suffolk Le Maisilon. When you're at the head of the exilarch, when you're there, you're at their mercy. So you don't know if you're getting another cup of wine. And then for the fact that you make another bracha when you get another cup of wine is because you didn't know you were getting it.
You weren't expecting it.
That's right.
Kind of like dessert and
So dessert and a meal is completely separate. But it's more like if you sat down,
yes.
Sorry?
When you're a guest at a host.
So when you're a guest at a host, it's actually an interesting part. When you're a guest in someone else's home, you're eating al das balabayas. So you are expecting to get whatever you're served. And if you don't have to make a bracha on every new thing. But apparently at the exilarch, you weren't expected to be served anything. And if you did, you said thank you. So if you got one cup of wine, you made a bracha, you said thank you. Am I going to get another one? Probably not. I don't know. And then, hey, I got another one. New bracha. So I wasn't expecting the other cup of wine. And therefore, the fact that over there they made another bracha on the wine after their benching, after the brachas hamazon, is not a proof that you're supposed to be doing it every time. It's because there, you're not. Exactly.
Maybe they thought the meal was over and then.
That's exactly. But Hacha, in your case, the cup is lying right in front of you, and your mind is there. You know you're going to be drinking it. Amar Le, so Rava said to him, further defending his practice. And this is going to become the main point of the discussion as we go tomorrow. I am following the students of Rav. I think Rav, if I'm not mistaken, Rav himself was a student of Rav. Or maybe he was Shmuel and he's following Rav. I'm pretty sure he's a student of Rav himself. Someone knows and can correct me. Okay. So Rava says, I'm following the students of Rav. Rav Bruna and Rav Chananel. Rav Bruna and Rav Chananel, Talmid Rav Havu, they are both students of Rav. Rav, by the way, being a student of Rabbi Yochanan I mentioned earlier, so he's an earlier generation within the Talmudic era, within the Babylonian era, from the second generation, the first generation. So Rav Bruna and Rav Chananel were students of Rav, and Havayasu Besudasa, they were sitting at a meal. Koyi Alayu Rav Yaiba Saba. Rav Yaiba Saba was attending to them. Not an uncommon thing that students would attend to the older scholars in an attempt to absorb as much as they can. The Gemara makes the comment elsewhere, it's greater to service the sages than to actually learn from them. Because the servicing them, you learn more by listening to their conversations, seeing how they behave. So it's not uncommon in the Gemara where you have a student attending to the scholars. So here it's Rav Yeva Saba, who's attending to these two students, Rav Bruna and Rav Chananel. Yeah, Bruna and Chananel. Serving them, literally serving them. Standing, attending them.
You're always there.
Shouting, but even serving them, like serving them their meal, picking up, cleaning up after them, serving them, literally serving them. They would
Students attend the class.
No, attending as like attending to them like a butler.
Right, I know.
Like a butler. We help them with their jackets, with their shoes, like a butler. And it was an attempt. The Gemara even says that a teacher shouldn't, in his humility, push away a student who wants to do that, because he's denying him the ability to learn. So allow him to. Anyway, so Rabbi Yabba was standing there attending to Rav Bruna and Rav Chananel, and Amar Lei, Rabbi Yabba said, "Havlam v'nivrach." Okay, let's bench. I guess he's kind of announcing the end of the meal. But L'Saif, at the end, Amar Lei, they responded to him. Rav Bruna and Chananel said back to him, "Havlam v'nishtei." Bring us another glass of wine we want to drink.
That's a different.
This is after they benched? Or before?
No, didn't bench yet.
Before.
But he said, "Let's bench."
When you make the declaration to want to bench,
The meal is over.
After that, you need to make.
What does I? Amar lahu. So he said to them, Rav Yevi Saba said to them, Hachi Amar Rav. This is what your teacher Rav said. Given that Misr Havlam v'nivrach, once we declared that we're ready to bench. I'm sorry, he didn't say to them. They said it was both them to him. First he said, bring us our benches, we're going to bench. And then they said, you know what, bring us wine. So he told them, that your teacher Rav said that once you said, let's bench, you're forbidden to drink unless you make a bracha. My time, what's the reason? Your mind has been removed from the meal. And therefore, says Rava, if when you say, let us bench, the meal is over, how much more so if I actually benched?
Mhm.
And therefore, even if I know I'm going to be drinking that glass of wine after I bench, but once I bench, it's over, the meal is over. And Rashbam gives us the following rationale. Which after bracha do you make on Haggadah? You make an abridged version of the entirety of benching. So how much more so the entirety of benching covers it?
Mhm.
So in other words, what was the logic of Yaakov saying that even though you bench, you shouldn't make a bracha Haggadah? Because your wine is a separate meal. Maybe, but what after bracha do you make on wine? The shortened version of the one you're making on bread. So if the one you're making on bread covers the meal, so if the shortened version would cover your wine, then the full one will cover your wine. And therefore it would be like this, says Rashbam. If I said Rabbi Levi benching or Rabbi Nevarech, Havdala v'nivrach in the Aramaic here, let's bench. And then I decide let's drink a glass of wine. I have to make Haggadah. Do I have to make an after blessing on that wine?
Of course, should we look prayer, no?
It's going to be covered.
Oh, did you bench yet?
No, I didn't.
No? So
but I said
you bench.
Okay, exactly. I said Rabbi Nevarech. I said Havdala v'nivrach. So my meal is over. And if I drink another glass of wine, I have to make another bracha. But the after bracha that I make for my meal is going to cover my wine also. Even though I make a new hagafen on the cup.
This is all based on intention, like when we
Correct.
learned about where you do the kiddush and if you can see it in the room and all that.
Exactly.
But if you have the intention of continuing to drink, then shouldn't it be
unless you said let's bench?
Unless you said,
because that would mean
say like let's bench, but we're still drinking.
If you said we'll have one more glass of wine and then we'll bench. Okay, so you said
Okay.
So there's a whole section of Shulchan Aruch discussing this very thing. We learned Kufayim Ches 178, which was about walking out of the room, and Kufayim Tes, the very next one, is about this. Is about when a person makes a declaration of some sort that indicates his meal is over. And what kind of declaration exactly do you make to indicate your meal is over? Yeah, what do you say?
So the long version covers that.
Covers the wine, yes. Correct.
That's not halacha.
It is halacha.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you may, yes.
If you say I'm on the bench and then after thought you come
and you bench it?
No.
You said Rabbi said you said guys, let's bench.
Yeah. And then I think I'll have that glass of wine.
So you make hagafen.
And then benching covers that.
Correct. Correct. If I'm not mistaken. I'm not mistaken. That's how Rashbam puts it, and I'm pretty sure that's the halacha. We'll look it up. Okay, so we're not going to learn the whole simon. It's a very long simon, but we're going to learn at least some of it. God willing. Okay, there's one more detail, then we'll learn that tomorrow, God willing. Yeah. Okay. A wonderful day, Yidden. Easy fast and a meaningful fast. And let these days be transformed to joy for all.